What's the coffee?
You can drink that. No. Like if for some reason you're showing something and you never had it in,
No, I don't think actually, I didn't copy the next.
Oh, really?
And then
Exactly. I can't find it. I do not have the
There's a section in the book he's standing up.
I actually can't find it.
And that's too loud. Clean down.
Could I go put my
We're gonna start. You can print it. Don't do it now. Get it after. Hand it in after. Do you know how to hand things in on the through reception?
No.
You go to reception. Make sure your name is on it and my name is on it. Now where'd my sheet go? And then you just tell me to put it in my mailbox.
All right.
You don't have to hand it in this class. You can hand it after.
All right.
There's me saving Brandon.
Okay. Assembly went long, so we need to get started. All those who have handed in things. This page, you do not have to write anything. I'm just going to talk. To give you a sense of place and history. There's a few little weird quirks about the history of this. Because we know Darwin's name quite well. We don't know Wallace's that well. And Wallace was not arguably, he was way more famous than Darwin was in his own time. But Darwin wrote a book. Wallace didn't write a book. Fame is fleeting if you have nothing to pin it to. Darwin was born to a wealthy family. He studied religion and natural history at Cambridge. So he was a fairly well-to-do young man. He had to figure out what he wanted to do with his life. It is often quoted that he was hired as the naturalist on the HMS Beagle. He was not. They had a naturalist, which is why we know that he wasn't. Occasionally as a euphemism. They don't want to say what his real job was. His real job was to prevent this captain from committing suicide. The captain had a brother, was it a brother? I think it was a brother, who had committed suicide, and at the time they thought it ran in the family, like it was genetics. Like, so if you had a family member that do that, you were at high risk. And so the captain was really worried, like, I need someone to talk to. And so he hired Darwin, because he's from a wealthy family. He's gone to Cambridge. He's a good conversationalist. He wants to come because he can go around and collect his nature crap. And then it'll be fun. And so Darwin got to go on. Darwin was terrible at collecting. He collected and labeled, but he was terrible at like recognizing what things were. He was sending all of this back to England while he was on the voyage. And on the other end, someone who was trained better in zoology was like, this is this type of bird, this is this type of bird, and would figure out what everything was that he was sending them. And that's when he figured out that all the birds he was sending back that he was mislabeling were all finches, which gave rise to Darwin's famous finches that we'll see a little bit later. So, young man goes on a voyage. If you have an opportunity to read the voyage of the HMS Beagle, it is actually quite an interesting read. It's not beyond your level at all. It's just a person's early voyage, so if you're interested in historical writing. He doesn't mention anything about evolution. It's not a scientific text. But it is interesting because you can know in advance, you can hear moments when he's writing, when he is obviously thinking about it. And you can almost feel the ideas coming together. And of course, that's his most famous picture, because when you get pictures and you're famous, you're old by that time. Wallace, born to a poor family, became an explorer in Brazil and Southeast Asia. He collected thousands of specimens and thousands of new species. With Darwin, he answered the question of why so many species. They worked together on evolution. Darwin published first. He published first mostly because he heard about Wallace's theory and was like, he was just going to keep his book unpublished for a long time. He was like, well, I better publish. And he was one of the most famous biologists in all of England. Darwin wrote a book. Books tend to last, so we tend to remember Darwin's. When we remember Wallace, we only remember the areas that he's wrong in most textbooks. Darwin also got some stuff wrong, but he got a little bit more famous later on, so we don't mention it as much. So context of history, and this is a very, very like English version, Darwin's voyage version. if people have versions from other areas of the world, other scientists. I have seen bits and pieces of natural selection being discussed in older texts, and I would like to include some of those, but I don't have them. Darwin and Wallace's observation. At this time, by the way, Mendel is completely unknown. So Mendel did his work. No one knows about it. So he's discovered how traits are passed down. They don't know that yet. So there's a couple of things that you may think are really obvious. But at the time, first you're just laying down the groundwork and being very clear about some things. So organisms give birth, ta-da, and pass on traits. What are the traits called from Mendel? What do we call different traits? Genes are the variety. Different types of traits of the same gene are called alleles. In every population, there is a variation of traits. Endless forms most beautiful. Now, if you have a bunch of, no, but those ones tend to die out fairly quickly. For the reason that evolution exists is that it's usually existing to make sure you're not going to get hit by disease and get completely wiped out. If you're all the same individual genetically and in terms of your phenotype, then something's going to evolve to hit you very fast. As we know now from our previous section, what creates new alleles?
Mutations.
Mutations. Now, some variations are going to be completely useless. They won't really do much. What variations affects evolution? How is it positive?
Ones that make them survive.
So there's a mutation that allows you to live longer.
Or no, is it like
The ones that like help you reproduce.
Yeah.
Reproduction. The only thing, it's an algorithm. Algorithms don't have brains behind them. They just pick. And so if you have more kids and those kids have more kids, then that is, by the very nature of an algorithm, more successful. It's a lot easier now talking about it because no, you can't find me on. First of all, I don't post any videos, and I deleted the app because someone would say something that was wrong.
That's rage bait.
And then I would stop and I would tell.
Every time.
Yeah. And is in the algorithm on TikTok, is there a brain behind that? Is there a person picking what you're gonna see? No. It's just automatic. Just registers your clips, gives you more.
See how accurate.
Oh yeah.
You can like request content now.
Can you?
We're gonna
Yeah.
request
Yeah.
correct
Like,
science.
How's that thing? It's like, do you want
Yeah.
more or less?
You can search for like
That was
correct
yesterday.
science or just like no more.
Oh, I spent so long. Anyway, stop. I didn't realize that just mentioning TikTok would create this much chaos. If I may read the other reason I downloaded it, and I don't know if you know this, but it's really fun to watch. And I'll start watching, and then I look up, and like 3 hours went by, and I didn't do any marking at all.
We don't need.
Yeah, so I stopped it. Like I uninstalled it like the end of summer.
Oh,
Oh, man,
what about Instagram Reels?
Oh, I don't even. No.
You can
No.
follow on Instagram.
What is that?
What does that say?
Effects.
Effective.
Woo! Now, an algorithm is, in one sense, if it's not pre-picking what might survive and trying to have the best outcome, it just ends up, the ones that are bad just die. So there are more species that are extinct than have ever been alive. Oh, sorry, that was backwards. There are many, many more species that are extinct than are alive today as species. Most species did not survive into the year 2025. There's been a variety of extinction events. Lots of things couldn't make it through. Lots of things are still dying. We're currently going through one of the major extinction events on our planet and have been for the last 100 years or so.
What is it, climate change?
Oh, just humans.
Oh.
We just like it.
It started with farming. It's ending with climate change. Climate change doing a lot. Our insect species are skyrocketing down.
Are we good? I think we're good.
Try not buying so much stuff. Just, a little if you can.
How am I supposed
Because we're cooking. Just a little.
to do
What?
A little cooking.
Yeah, we're getting cooked.
Well, it's getting hotter.
Not in our lifetime.
Yeah,
though,
no.
Uh-huh. I don't want to be negative. Oh, hold it. More offspring.
I think like no. Our kids. Yeah. I love consumerism.
Their shoes.
Unsuccessful variation.
For once. Are those like running shoes?
Now, I do want to emphasize, evolution isn't in any way ethics. Just because something is evolutionary successful doesn't mean that it is good, right, or natural. Natural law theory is a failed form of ethics. It's now discussed as a thing that's not ethics if you take ethics. And natural law theory is the theory that things that are natural are good and things that are unnatural are bad. And that is not really an ethical theory because, as we all know, the beaver dam, natural, sucks when compared to a human hydroelectric dam. Ours is bigger, it's more powerful. We did environmental impact studies. We felt sad about the creatures we killed to build it, and it's really cool and big. While the beaver dam, it's what, a bunch of twigs?
No electricity.
It's no electricity, and doesn't do a very good job. You find beavers with trees on top of them because that's how bad they are at felling trees. It also turns out just like logging is dangerous no matter who you are. I kid a little, but if you go into ethics, you look up natural law theory, they'll mention things like the tsunami. Okay, that's a larger philosophical problem. And the answer, just to be clear for you, for right now, me.